G'day internet, welcome to another episode of Morgan Makes. My name's Morgan and I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day. When I was a kid, I played a lot of Resident Evil. We go way back, all the way back to the original PlayStation 1 era. And it was kind of a rare commodity as a kid. No one I knew actually owned a PlayStation 1, so we had to rent like the whole console, everything from the video store. It was a really big and expensive endeavor when you're a young child, so yeah, playing Resident Evil 1 was a real treat, and it always intrigued me how that mansion was actually put together. You know, there's a lot of hidden rooms and secret doors and things like that, and I've always been interested in that type of thing. And, you know, as it turns out, after my rearrangement of downstairs a little bit, I've actually come up with a bit of an alignment that allows me to do something similar. So, let's go take a look. So, for those of you who don't know, Resident Evil was a game that was launched in 1996 by Capcom for the PlayStation 1. It was a fairly challenging zombie survival game with a strange liking for architecture-based puzzles. Hidden rooms, trapdoors, secret switches, puzzle locks, that sort of thing. I always wondered what it would be like to have to live with the inconvenience of having to go get the mask, to get the key, to go upstairs to the parlour. All I want is a moving bookshelf. So, that's the part we're going to be focusing on today. Well, anyway, here's my sacrificial bookshelf. I'm going to start by clearing it off and cleaning it up. I have this whole space behind here that I can't really access at the moment, and it's just full of old stuff. Home interior design wasn't exactly what I had in mind for this channel, but I was going to build it anyway, so why not make a video about it? Now, my place isn't very big, so I need to get creative about my storage options and stop letting all this space go to waste. You can see that all the stuff from the shelf is just there on the couch. It was threatening to rain outside, so I didn't really think it was a good idea to put any of my stuff out there. And that made getting the bookshelf on its side a wee bit tricky to do by myself. Well, this is the space I have to work with. As you can see, it's been a few years since I've swept behind here. Or at least you'd think that, but the bookshelf's only been in this spot for a week or so. I'm not sure where all this dog hair came from, but I have some ideas. So we can clean all that up now and we can get to work. The bookshelf has this big box bit at the bottom. I got some straight casters from the hardware store that only just come above this profile, 6 in total. This should allow the bookshelf to roll sideways without putting too much strain on the rest of the mechanism. Dad got me this fancy looking hammer, said it would help me mark the holes. So let's give that a go. So I marked out and drilled the holes for the first wheel, but I'd positioned it a little bit too close to the back of the bookshelf, so I had to make 2 of the holes a little bit bigger just to give the bolts a little bit more play in order to make it all fit. Well, that's 1 down, 5 to go. It took a bit of time and effort, but eventually all 6 wheels were installed into the bookshelf. Getting the whole thing back upright, the wheels work just as advertised, which is a nice change of pace for me. The only issue that I currently have is that now it's a bookshelf on wheels. It can go pretty much anywhere, so I need to restrict its movement. I also got this barn door slider kit at Bunnings, and I'm going to mount it onto this beam above the bookshelf. The alignment of the bookshelf to this beam is what gave me the idea in the first place. The only challenge that I'm going to face here is trying to get the 2 parts to join up somehow. But first, let's mount the barn door kit. Wait, I knew there was something I was forgetting. I have these partition curtains down here that I want to move around. I want to reuse them. I think I got them from IKEA a few years ago. So I have to take them down first. Now it's time for the barn door kit. And the instructions seem fairly straightforward. Let's do some measuring and get to drilling. The funny thing about my house, it's 182 years old. This beam is made of a wood native to Australia called ironbark. Us Aussies are a very literal people, and this wood earns its name. It only gets harder with age. I've seen it destroy very expensive nail guns in the past, and I should have known better. RIP drill bits. And while I was doing up the first bolt, the wood grabbed it and it sheared. So after I ground off what was left, I basically had to repeat the whole process again 20mm to the right. Okay, but now I have the hole drilled and the bar is just kind of swinging in the breeze there. I need to level it to the bookshelf and nothing else. The thing with 182-year-old buildings like this one is that nothing is level or square anymore, if it ever was. It also floods a lot around here, so the building has done quite a bit of settling over the centuries. So taking measurements off the bookshelf for each end, I was happy to see that the floor only has a very slight bow in it. After permanently damaging half a dozen drill bits, I finally had the bar hung. It's also 700 mils away from what I want to attach it to. I had a few different ideas floating around my head on how I want to bridge the gap. My first thought was using a little bit of Gal box section to make like arms that come up from the top and bolt onto the wheels of the slider kit. But it was all rusty and disgusting, so I changed my mind when I found this nice bit of wood in the shed. So I measured the holes to be even on the wood, and making sure they had the same orientation for both the wheel arms, I drilled them both out. I gave the board a quick sand just to smooth out some of the rougher spots and get rid of some of those big splinters. I wanted to bolt the wheel bracket straight to the piece of wood. Luckily, the bolts, these ones anyway, were a perfect fit for the holes that I just drilled. I don't know why all the bolts in the kit were different sizes, but it was real nice that they grabbed tight. However, the nuts for these bolts are domed, so they'll only go so far down the thread, so I need to make some spaces. I cut up some 16mm steel conduit into about 20mm long bits, so I used them as spacers. They were really hot after being cut, so I had to handle them with a spare bolt. Once they were all cut and secure, I could move on to deciding how I would attach the wheels to the bookshelf. I briefly re-entertained the idea of the Gal box section, but it would need to sit in the middle of the top board of the bookshelf, and I didn't quite like that. I also thought that maybe wires were an option, but I quickly dismissed that notion. The wheels were only held on by gravity. If they became unseated somehow, the whole thing would fall down and conk me in the head. It was a lot to ponder. I could have done a lot of things with more industrial mechanics. Booker rod was always an option, but I wanted to keep it kind of oldish looking. So while I thought on that, I thought I may as well keep on to the things that I know that need to be done. I cut the top corner off the bookshelf with a rusty handsaw to help it fit better into the corner of the stairs and hide the gap a little. And yet another trip up the Bunnings has netted me these bits of pine dressing, so apparently I didn't need the spaces after all. So I took the bolts off, and measured the holes again. I drilled out the markings on the pine dressing and bolted it all back together, sans spaces. And now it has this really odd center of gravity, which makes it really tricky to work with on the narrow workbench, but it came out just fine. I'm going to use some little elbow brackets to mount the pine to the bookshelf and thus joining the whole bit together. So I get to measuring the position for the brackets. And in this episode of Morgan Makes Life Difficult for Himself, you get to watch me realize in real time that the barn door bar isn't centered over the bookshelf properly to allow for the full travel closed. I had suspected that the new position of the curtain rail might interfere with it, but this just confirms it. I'm gonna have to move it. What fun. That means drilling all those holes again. Anyway, I did that, nothing you haven't seen before, and I screwed the brackets down on top of the bookshelf. Now it has the full range of motion that I was looking for, but it hits part of the workbench behind it when it's closing. It's throwing it out of line. So with very little space to work with, I put some MDF and some pegboard behind the workbench to close off that area from that side too. This also holds the bench a little bit closer to that other wall and a bit more out of the way of the bookshelf. With all the stuff loaded back onto the shelf, I was actually pleased to find that the extra weight makes it a lot easier to use, as the slight unevenness in the floor tile matters a lot less now against the rubber casters. I also got these little tiny roller dealies from the hardware store to keep the bookshelf from rubbing up against the stairs. For the moment, I'm going to call that finished. It could have been a lot better. I should have painted the beam before I started, but whatever, I'll deal with that in another 10 years or so. For now though, I'm satisfied with a job well done. Alright, so that was my hidden cupboard, secret sliding wardrobe bookshelf thing. It's pretty cool, right? I've still got a little bit of finishing touches to do. I still got to put something on top to hide the rollers and everything. Finish the inside, obviously. I'm just going to use it for storage anyway, so I don't really see the point in rushing that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed building it. It was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed yourself here today. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment if you have any suggestions or thoughts. I always want to hear your opinions on things. Sure, why not? Anyway, my name's Ben Morgan. I hope you have a fantastic day. This has been Morgan Makes, and I'll see you all next time, guys. Cheers.